There was a city so bright that even the night seemed to blush in its presence. A city where no clouds dared linger too long. No rain lasted more than a minute. And no one at all cast a shadow. They called it Solmir, the place where light had won. The streets gleamed white with polished stones. Windows flashed like mirrors. Fountains sprayed water so clear it looked like falling glass. And everywhere laughter. Polite, musical, empty, the kind of laughter that fills silence, without meaning. For in Solmir, people had learned long ago that shadows were unnecessary. They had been banished like unwanted thoughts, or so they believed. But in a crooked alley between two perfect houses, in a corner where the sun always almost reached, lived Liora. Liora was small for her age, though no one quite agreed on what age that was. Her hair was the color of dust in a sunbeam, her eyes the gray of waiting rain. She didn't shine like the others. She watched, and when she walked, there at her feet followed a shadow. The only one left. Liora noticed it when she was very small. She'd play in the garden behind her home, a garden that grew flowers which refused to cast shade. And she'd see it, a soft outline, a bit of night stitched to her heels. At first, she tried to hide it, but shadows have a way of showing themselves at the worst moments. So, Liora learned to walk carefully, to speak softly, to stay where the sun wasn't looking. What she didn't know not yet was that the shadow had a name. Not a name in letters, a name in longing. It was called Echo, and it wasn't just hers. It was everyone's. All the forgotten shadows, all the quiet truths, all the hidden aches the city had thrown away. It had followed her because she saw it, and because, deep down, she listened. One day, when the sun was at its highest and the city was at its loudest, Liora did something no one in Solmir had done in 100 years. She stepped into the darkest part of the city, not by accident, by choice. And there, waiting where the sun could not chase it away, was a shadow not her own. It quivered and whispered, "Collect me." Liora hesitated. The shadow at her feet Teko seemed to lean forward, as if urging her on. The strange shadow trembled like a forgotten melody. It had no clear shape, no clear owner, only an ache that made the air colder. Liora knelt, carefully, as though she were catching a soap bubble or a sigh, and cupped her hands round the shadow. It flowed into her palms weightless, but heavy, with meaning. The moment it touched her skin, she felt it. A boy, sitting alone at a fountain, eyes full of questions, hands that once tried to shape light, a name whispered by no one anymore. Finn. She gasped. The shadow didn't hurt her. It simply wanted to be held. So she did, and with it came a soft breeze through the alley, a breeze that smelled like rain, a breeze that made the polished stones of Solmir's streets seem just a little duller. That night, in her small room behind the garden that wouldn't shade, Liora made a decision. She took an old basket one meant for carrying fruit and lined it with scraps of cloth, and into it she placed the trembling shadow, her first collected piece of what the city had thrown away. In the days that followed, she found more. A shadow beneath the baker's window, warm and sweet, like the memory of shared bread. A shadow beneath the clock tower, thin and lonely, shaped like waiting. A shadow by the schoolhouse gate, playful, shy, forgotten. Each one slid into her basket. Each one made the city a fraction colder. Each one made the air a little heavier. But Liora felt lighter, because with every shadow she collected, she felt the world's quiet truths coming back to their rightful place. Then, on the 7th night, Echo spoke, not in words of air, in words of heart. They will notice, and they will not understand. Liora hugged the basket to her chest. "I will show them," she whispered. "I will show them why shadows matter." And somewhere, Beneath the bright streets of Solmir, the forgotten began to stir. On the 8th day, the sun rose with its usual perfection golden, warm, and utterly blind. The people of Solmir stirred in their spotless homes, straightened their spotless collars, and stepped out into their spotless lives. And no one noticed that the air was different, not colder, exactly, just heavier, as though the sky had begun remembering something it was told to forget. Liora dressed carefully that morning, not in bright colors like the other children, not in ribbons or polished shoes. She wore a faded gray coat, soft with use, and a satchel, slung over one shoulder it seems bulging slightly, with the weight of hidden things. In her arms, she carried the basket. It was covered with a cloth the color of fog. The shadows inside shifted gently, but made no sound. She walked slowly toward the center of the city, past the fountains that never splashed too loudly, past the windows that never reflected anything uncertain, past the statues that all smiled the same polished smile. She reached the plaza. People bustled round her, efficient, elegant, uncurious. She stood on the central stone platform, where announcements were sometimes read, though none had been needed in years. Liora cleared her throat. No one stopped, so she whispered, "Excuse me, I have something to show you." Still, the crowd moved, so she said it louder, then again, and again, until finally, a child turned, then another, and then quiet. Liora gently removed the cloth. The shadows inside stirred. They rose soft tendrils of memory and feeling and truth curling into the light. Gasps rippled through the crowd. What are those? Why are they following her? That one doesn't it look like? A woman dropped her handbag. A man stepped backward. A teacher covered a child's eyes. And then someone shouted, "It's darkness." That one word struck the air like a cracked bell. Darkness. In Solmir, that meant danger. That meant wrongness. That meant everything the city had tried to forget. Liora stood still, holding her basket. "They're not evil," she said. Her voice trembled, but didn't break. "They're parts of us, the parts we left behind, the parts we weren't brave enough to carry." But the crowd didn't listen. Not yet. And then one of the shadows rose higher. It floated toward an old man standing stiffly near the edge of the plaza. It hovered for a moment, and then wrapped around him, not like a serpent, like a memory. The man gasped and began to weep. "I had a sister," he said. "She used to sing in the rain. I forgot her. I forgot her name." The crowd fell silent. Another shadow found a child. Another, a mother. Another, a boy with shaking hands. Each one found its person. And where they touched, they didn't harm. They healed. They made people remember. But light, when forced to confront shadow, sometimes grows cruel before it learns to be kind. From high above, the sun, perhaps frightened by what it could not erase, grew brighter. Too bright. Blinding. Liora screamed and covered her basket. The shadows hissed, curling back into her arms. The light pressed harder, trying to erase what could not be named. But just as the heat reached its peak, someone stepped beside her, a child. Then another, and another. Children who had seen the shadows and not looked away. They formed a circle, not of defense, of acceptance. And the light blinked, confused, then softened. The sun cannot destroy what has already been forgiven. And that day, in the heart of a city that feared its own silence, Liora stood beneath a sky that finally dared to hold both shadow and light. The morning after the plaza, the sun rose more gently, not weaker, just softer, as though it had finally realized it was not the only light that mattered. Liora awoke to birdsong. Not the artificial kind piped through Solmir's soft speakers, but real birds, real wings, real sound. Something had changed, and she felt it before she even opened her eyes. The basket beside her bed was glowing, not brightly, just enough to cast a gentle shimmer across the walls, as though moonlight had curled up inside it. And when she leaned over, still wrapped in the warmth of her blanket, she heard a voice. Small, quiet. Liora, are you listening? She blinked. Who said that? The voice came again. It's me. I think I'm your basket, or what your basket became. She sat up slowly, heart steady. You can talk. The basket shifted, as though shrugging. Not so most, but you've been listening for a long time, even before you knew how. She placed her hands gently on the rim of the basket. Its surface was warm, not hot, not magical, just alive. She whispered, "What do I call you?" A pause. Then, whisper, "If that's all right." She smiled. It's perfect. That morning, Liora took Whisper outside. Not to show, not to explain, just to walk. And as she did, the basket hummed softly, like a sleeping cat remembering a lullaby. Inside it, 6 shadows, each one with a different shape, a different weight, a different silence. And as the sunlight touched them, gently now, they stirred, one by one, and they began to speak, not aloud, inside Liora. The first asked, "Why was I forgotten?" The second, "If I am sorrow, will I always hurt someone?" The third, "Do you still love someone even if they left you behind?" And Liora, walking barefoot through the soft grass behind her garden, answered, "Because people fear what they don't name. No, you only hurt when no one listens to you. Yes, love doesn't disappear when someone does." Whisper hummed louder, and inside, the shadows shifted, not darker, lighter. They were becoming stories. That evening, as the light curled into softer hues, and the air smelled faintly of roasted bread and lavender, Liora sat by her window with Whisper in her lap. The shadows inside were quiet now, not asleep, just listening. Then, without a sound, one of them rose. It wasn't large, but it was colder than the others. And when it moved, the candle beside Liora flickered, not because of wind, because of memory. "My name is Ilya," the shadow said. "I was once a librarian." Liora tilted her head. "In Solmir? No. Before the forgetting, before the city decided sunlight meant safety, I kept the records of the stories they erased." Liora leaned closer. "What happened to them?" Ilya's shape rippled, growing thinner at the edges. "There is a presence. It moves like fog. It does not take names. It eats them, slowly, without teeth." Whisper shifted in her arms. "It's coming," said the basket softly. That's why the shadows began to wake. Leora's heart pounded. But why now? The shadow didn't answer. Instead, it showed her. Images flickered behind her eyes. A corridor of glass bookshelves. Pages turning themselves. Children forgetting how to read. Windows growing wider. And a dark line crawling through the floor, as if ink itself had decided to unwrite the world. Liora gasped and clutched Whisper tighter. "I have to stop it." The shadow Ilya drifted closer. "You cannot fight what you do not name." Liora stood, eyes firm, voice steady. "Then tell me what it is." A pause. Then, one word, hollow fade, and with it, the last bit of warmth left the room. The next morning, the birds didn't sing. Liora noticed it first. Not the silence, but the wrongness of it. Like a skipped line in a song. Like a breath that should have come, but didn't. She stepped outside. Whisper held firmly in her arms and walked toward the west end of Solmir. Toward a place that was once full of music. The schoolhouse. It stood, as always, clean, bright, freshly painted. But something was wrong. There were no children, no laughter, no sound at all. Liora opened the gate. It didn't creak. It didn't do anything. Even sound was gone. She entered the school. Desks in rows. Books on shelves. Everything intact. But the moment she stepped through the threshold, her chest tightened. A pressure, like something pushing down from the inside of her own thoughts. She walked to the center of the classroom. And there, in the middle of the floor, a circle. Not drawn, not carved, just empty, no dust, no color, no memory. Like a hole where something had once happened, but was now unhappened. Whisper trembled. He was here. Liora knelt, touched the floor, and everything vanished. For a moment, she saw nothing, felt nothing, was nothing. Then a voice. No louder than a breath beneath breath. You cannot carry everything. She opened her eyes. The circle was gone. So was the room. She was outside again. Whisper still in her arms. Shadows inside, whispering to each other in a language made of fear. He feeds on what is not said. He lives where truth is buried. He moves beneath memory like roots through silence. Liora stood up, eyes wide. Then I need to find him, before he finds the rest. And behind her, unnoticed, a boy stood watching. No shadow, no name, but eyes that once belonged to someone who remembered everything. The first time Liora saw him, he wasn't really there. She stood on the narrow bridge above the mirror water canal, watching her reflection blur in the moving current. When something in her chest tilted, not pain, not fear, something stranger, like a word she'd forgotten she knew. She looked up. On the far end of the bridge, half shaded by the winged shadows of an overhead dove, stood a boy, or the idea of one. He wasn't reflected in the water. He didn't cast a shadow. But the way the light bent around him, like a page curling in the heat, told her he was real. He were no color. His shirt was pale as hush, his trousers the color of breath. His eyes, she could not see them. They shimmered, not with light, but with the refusal of it. Liora took a step forward. So did he. Who are you? She asked. His mouth moved, but no sound came. Whisper, in the basket at her side, shuddered. He carries on words. Be cautious. Liora tilted her head. You don't speak. The boy looked down, as if disappointed in himself. Then, slowly, he pointed to her shadow, then to her chest, then to himself. It took her a moment to understand. You can't speak because your shadow is missing. He nodded, and that one movement sent a ripple through the air around them, as if silence itself had exhaled. Where did it go? She asked, softly. The boy closed his eyes, and for a breath of time, Liora felt it, a cold that pressed into her memory. Not her skin, not her bones, her memory, as if something she once knew was suddenly missing. And in the distance, a bell rang. Only once, but she knew it wasn't a bell. It was a warning. The boy turned, not with urgency, but with the heavy sadness of someone who knows he is always one page ahead of the story that needs him. He walked away, and with each step, the shadows around him did not move, because there were none. And Liora whispered, I will find your name. I will find your shadow, even if I have to follow silence itself. That night, Liora couldn't sleep, not because she was afraid, but because something in her mind kept echoing. A shape, a silence, a name that almost existed. She sat by the window, with Whisper in her lap. The stars outside blinked lazily, as if unsure whether they were being watched. Below, the city was still, too still. He has no name, Whisper murmured, not because he was never given one, but because it was taken. Liora nodded slowly. By hollow fade, the basket shifted in her arms. Not quite a nod, not quite denial. Perhaps, or something that came before it, something deeper, older, Something that unwrites names like dew vanishes from stone. Liora stood. She knew where she had to go. To the oldest part of Solmir, a place most children avoided not because it was forbidden, but because no one remembered it existed. The Mapmaker's District. It was once a thriving corner of the city, a place of parchments and stars drawn in ink, and compasses that pointed not north, but to memories yet unformed. Now it was empty. Buildings still stood, windows still framed rooms. But no one lived there, and the wind moved too carefully. She walked past broken globes, dusty chart rooms, and faded murals of places the city never acknowledged. And there, beneath a sign that read Nomen Tower in letters half-eaten by time, she saw him, the boy, waiting, as though he had always been there. Liora stepped forward, her voice a whisper not of sound, but of purpose. I came to learn your name. The boy didn't smile, but something in the air softened. And then, a wind, not from the sky, but from within the tower. It spilled from the door like spilled ink. It passed through her, and with it came 100 forgotten names. Too fast, too many, too heavy. Liora gasped, but one name lingered. Just one. Solon. She looked at the boy. He looked at her, and though no word passed between them, he heard it. And in that instant, his eyes changed. They filled with shadow, not darkness. Shadow. And at last, he cast one. Whisper trembled with awe. You did not give him a name. You returned it, and somewhere, far below the tower, a deep voice hissed. One name found, 100 more to bury. They left the Mapmaker's District in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because the air itself seemed to be listening. Liora walked with Whisper clutched tightly in her arms, while Solon stayed close, still adjusting to the strange weight of a shadow newly returned. His footsteps made no sound, but his presence pressed gently into the world again. The city didn't greet them. It recoiled. Shutters closed. Windows turned blank. People passed without looking. Not from fear, from instinct, as if their eyes had been trained not to see what didn't sparkle. They reached the garden behind Leora's home, the one where the sun never quite reached. There, she opened the basket. The shadows inside stirred as always, soft, curling, whispering. But one of them did not move. It lay flat, still, too still. Liora reached toward it, but Whisper shivered beneath her fingers. Wait, that one does not belong. Solon frowned. The light near him bent strangely again. Liora looked closer. The shadow had no shape, or rather, it had too many faces, figures, moments, all flickering, like old film through broken glass. And then, it spoke, not in voice, not in mind, in memory, but not hers. Someone else's. You thought shadows were only the forgotten, but what of those who choose to forget? The ground beneath her feet rippled. Solon stumbled, clutching his head. Whisper hissed softly. It's not a shadow. It's a mouth. Liora stared. What are you? The shadow rose. Not high just enough. And from its center bloomed a shape, a mask. White, blank, cracked. And behind it, hollow Fate's voice. You collect what the world discards. I devour what the world denies. We are not so different. Liora stepped back. No, you erase. I remember. The shadow mask trembled, and then it smiled. Not cruelly, sadly. Then remember this. I was once a whisper, too, before they stopped listening. And in a flicker of silence, the mask crumbled, and the false shadow melted into the earth. Solon looked at her, not afraid, but changed. You saw it. She nodded slowly. Yes, and it saw me. Whispers. Voice came quiet. We are no longer alone in the dark, but the dark now knows our names. There was no path to the orchard, not because it was far, not because it was hidden, but because it only appeared when someone was ready to hear what had never been said. Liora didn't know how she found it. One moment, she was walking through a grove of whisper willows trees that rustled even without wind, and the next, the air grew sweeter, thicker, almost like breath before a confession. She stepped through an archway of thorns, and there it was, the orchard. The trees were unlike anything she had ever seen. They were tall, yes, but curved inward, like they were listening. Their bark shimmered not with color, but with emotion, shades of longing, glints of regret. And their leaves, they whispered names, softly, names that had never been spoken aloud. Names that belonged to wishes, too fragile to survive the world. Solon followed in silence. His steps were careful, respectful, like a guest entering a cathedral woven of dreams. He paused beneath one of the trees and looked up. From one of its low branches hung a single, silver fruit. It pulsed gently. Liora stepped beside him. "Do you hear it?" He nodded. "It's my mother's voice." She gasped. "You remember her?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed a hand over his heart, and for the first time, Liora saw a shadow move beneath his feet, no longer borrowed, his own. Whispers stirred. Every fruit in this orchard is a wish, not one spoken aloud, but one that should have been. Liora reached toward another branch. A golden fruit, shaped like a tear, shimmered. She brushed it with her fingers and saw a girl standing in a dark room, hands trembling, voice caught in her throat, wanting to say, "I'm scared," but never did. The fruit pulsed, then faded. "You remembered for her," Whisper murmured. But then, from deep within the orchard, a sound. Not a whisper, not a wind, a crack, like wood breaking, like memory being torn. Solon looked toward the sound. So did Liora, and she knew they were not the only ones in the orchard. They followed the sound, through golden canopies that whispered forgotten lullabies, through rows of trees bending inward, like they were mourning. And then, they found it, a tree, shattered from within, its trunk split open, not from rot or storm, but from something that had fought to get out. At its roots, a fallen fruit, cracked, drained, empty. Liora knelt beside it, Whisper pressed warm in her arms. This wish was taken. Solon reached down and touched the bark. He flinched. It was stolen, not by the one who needed it, by someone who wanted it. Liora looked up sharply. What happens when a wish is taken by the wrong person? Whisper's voice dropped low. Then it becomes a lie. The air shifted. Cold, not sharp, like ice. Cold like emptiness. And from behind the broken tree, something stepped out. A shadow. But not like the others. This one didn't curl. Didn't drift. It walked. Straight-backed. Steady. And smiling. Liora stood, heart steady. Who are you? The shadow tilted its head. Its voice was rich, melodic, confident. I am what you wanted. I am what she was afraid to say. I am the truth made beautiful. Solon took a step back. That's not truth. That's a mask. The shadow laughed. A mask is just a truth that someone's not ready to wear. It moved closer. Not threatening, but persuasive. Like a voice you almost believe. Why carry the weight of forgotten sorrow? Why gather broken memories? I can give you a story where no one hurts. Where wishes are always granted. Where hollow fade is just a bedtime tale. Liora narrowed her eyes. No, no, no. That's not truth. That's comfort with a leash. The shadow's smile cracked. And for a moment, just a flash, its true shape showed. Empty sockets. No mouth. No voice. Only hunger. Then it hissed. You will regret refusing me. And vanished into the orchard mist. Solon exhaled slowly. That wasn't a memory. Leora shook her head. It was a mimic. Whisper whispered. Something has begun to feed on the orchard. Trees pressed inward, their leaves brushing Leora's shoulders with the gentleness of those who had seen too much and still hoped. Whisper, warm against her chest, seemed to beat in rhythm with her heart. Solon walked beside her, quieter than usual. He was listening, not to the sounds, to the absence of them. Because ahead, the orchard stopped. There, in a wide, empty clearing, stood a single tree. It had no leaves, no fruit, no shade, and yet it glowed, softly, like a lullaby still waiting to be sung. Leora approached. The air here was heavier, not with fear, but with meaning, and as she reached the base of the tree, she saw them, hundreds of tiny carvings, not names, not words, moments, a hand held so tightly, a tear never wiped, a song hummed once and never repeated. This tree, Whisper said, grows from what was never meant to be remembered, but was loved too much to lose. Leora placed her palm against its trunk, and the tree shuddered, not with resistance, with recognition. A branch lowered, a bud bloomed, and from it, a single fruit unfolded. Not silver, not gold, but clear, like memory, before it became a thought. She understood. This was the first wish, the one that began it all. The one that said, let someone, someday, remember what no one else could hold. Leora took the fruit in her hands, but she didn't eat it, didn't crush it. She placed it in Whisper's center. Whisper glowed, and the orchard exhaled. Far above them, unseen, the sky blinked, and Hollowfade, wherever he lingered, paused, because something had just chosen to protect what he could not consume. A wish made for others. A wish made with love and without ego. And it was strong, stronger than silence. Solon looked at her. You just told the orchard. I'm not afraid anymore. Leora nodded. I told it. Even if I am, I'll keep listening. The entrance wasn't a door. It wasn't even hidden. It was simply forgotten. At the edge of Solmir's northern square, past a broken fountain carved with names no one remembered, Leora saw it. A staircase, stone, descending into black. Solon stepped beside her. Are you sure? She nodded. I heard them in the orchard. The ones who were almost me, the ones who never were. Whispers stirred. This place is not memory. It is possibility. It is where the world stores its unlived lives. They descended. Each step pulled something from her, a doubt, a fear, a version of herself that once almost existed. And yet, she didn't feel smaller. She felt clearer. The air below was heavy, not with dust, with questions. Walls glowed faintly, not from light, but from presence, like a crowd holding its breath behind stone. Then they saw it. The city. Beneath the city. It looked like Solmir, but not. The streets were softer, the buildings taller. The sky wasn't there. Only darkness painted with forgotten constellations. And walking through it were people, almost people. Shadows that smiled. Eyes that almost blinked. Hands that reached for nothing. One step forward. A girl. Small. Familiar. She looked like Leora. But her eyes held nothing. No memory. No weight. Only questions that never became words. Leora froze. Solon whispered, she looks like you? Leora nodded. No, she looks like who I would have been if I'd never listened. The not Leora spoke. Her voice was dry, soft, wrong. Why did you choose pain? Leora stepped closer. Because pain remembers. Because pain cares. The girl tilted her head. I wanted safety. You got silence. Is that worse? Leora knelt. Yes, because silence forgets you even existed. The girl blinked. For the first time, a single tear, not water, but dust fell from her cheek, and she vanished. Solon looked around. They're all us, aren't they? Liora whispered. They're the echoes, versions of who we could have been, if we never dared to change. From far away, a bell rang. Not real, not loud, but the kind that calls shadows back to their stories. And somewhere deeper, something else stirred. Something that had lived there long before the city above. Past streets paved with questions. Past doors that opened into almost rooms, places where things nearly happened, but didn't. Solon paused at a staircase. Each step led both up and down. He looked to Liora. Which way? She closed her eyes, listened, and heard it. A heartbeat, slow and stubborn, pulsing beneath everything. They descended. The walls narrowed, the glow dimmed, the silence sharpened. Then they reached it. A chamber, round, empty, still, except for the figure at the center. It was not human, but not a shadow either. It flickered, like old film burned at the edges. It shimmered, as if trying to hold a shape that memory refused. And yet, it was solid, real, becoming. Liora stepped forward. What are you? The figure raised its head, eyes blurred, unfinished. Voice like ink on wet paper. I was never born. I was never wished. I was never needed. But I remained. She swallowed. You're a memory? No. I'm the gap. The absence. The story that was never told. Solon stepped beside her. Why are you here? Because I want to be. Isn't that enough? The figure shifted. Became taller, its shape more like Liora's, its voice suddenly clearer. You gave names to shadows. You gave shape to what others threw away. Then give me something. Give me being. Liora's heart ached. This thing wasn't evil, but it was hungry for meaning, for belonging, for reality. She looked at Whisper. What happens if I name it? The basket pulsed. Then it becomes part of the world, and the world will owe it a place. Solon frowned. What if it takes someone else's? Liora looked at the figure. It stared back, waiting, not with threat, with hope. She knelt, not to surrender, to choose. You may exist, she whispered, but not alone. Not as what was lost, but as what might protect what remains. She reached forward, touched the figure's hand. Your name is Vest. A breath swept the chamber. The figure shuddered, not with pain, with relief. Color bled into its outline. Form settled into frame. It was not perfect, but it was present. Vest stood, looked at Liora. I will not forget this. She smiled. Good. Because I do enough remembering for everyone else. Whisper whispered, you did not rescue a shadow. You adopted a ghost of potential and gave it purpose. Vest led them deeper, no longer flickering, now solid. Walking with the weight of someone finally allowed to walk. The corridors bent in impossible ways. Stairs looped. Doors opened into the same room they left. Time has slowed. Or maybe memory was just too heavy here. Then, a gate. Tall, black, made not of metal, but silence. Vest turned. Beyond here is where they speak. The ones that chose not to be. They are not angry. They are not kind. But they are curious. Leora's pulse quickened. What do they want? Vest smiled softly. What all forgotten things want? A reason. They stepped through. The air inside was colder, but not from chill, from truth. And before them rose, not a room, not a throne, not even a place, but a void shaped like a question. And from it echoed a voice. Ancient. Patient are many. Why do you remember? Liora blinked. Because someone must. Why you? Because I choose to. Silence. Then, what if you forget? Leora's breath caught. Behind her, Solon placed a hand on her shoulder. She found her strength. I won't. Everything forgets eventually. She looked into the void, and spoke clearly. Then I'll remember again, and again, and again, until remembering is the only thing left of me. The void pulsed, and out of it a shape stepped forward. No eyes, no form, just a cloak of black echo, and echo, and echo. It held something, small, a vial. Inside, a single, flickering thread. The first memory, Vest whispered. The seed from which all shadows grew. The voice returned. Will you take it? Knowing that if it breaks, all will forget again. Liora reached forward, hand steady, voice strong. I don't collect shadows because I want to. I do it because they are worth remembering. She took the vial, and the void closed. The city trembled, not in fear, in recognition, as if every forgotten echo whispered at once, she is real. We are remembered. We are not gone. They found it at the edge of the world, or at least the edge of their world. It stood where no path led, where no shadow dared linger, where the wind forgot to blow. A house, old, still, breathing. Its shutters closed, though the windows flickered. Its roof slanted, though no storm had bent it. Its doors slightly open, as if it had been expecting them. Liora stepped forward. Vest paused beside her. This house doesn't exist. Solon frowned. And yet, it's real. Whisper stirred in her arms. It exists because someone needed it to. And it sleeps because no one has dared to wake it. Liora touched the doorknob. Cold, but not unfriendly, just ancient. She opened the door, and they entered. Inside, no clocks, no ticking, no bells, no time, only rooms that shimmered with memory, and corridors that curved into themselves. The first room they entered had no floor, just stars beneath their feet. The second, a hallway lined with doors, each door pulsed like a heartbeat. The third, a library filled with books titled with moments, the breath she held at 8 years old. The glance he regretted in winter. Vest turned slowly. This house remembers futures, not just pasts. All that might have been, and all that could still be. Liora walked to one of the books. She opened it. Inside, a story, written in her own handwriting. A story of a girl who never found the basket, who never heard the shadows, who lived in a world of light and smiled, but always felt something missing. She closed the book. Her hands shook. Why is this here? Whisper's voice. Soft as fog, because you ask the world to show you what you might forget. Then, a sound. Footsteps, not theirs, from the far end of the library. Liora turned and saw herself, but not quite. This version wore white, eyes calm, smile perfect, hands clean, and no shadow followed her. Not a single one. The other Liora spoke. You look tired. The real Liora didn't answer. The not quite her continued. You carry so much. Why? What do these shadows ever give you in return? Leora's voice was quiet. Truth. Truth is heavy. So is silence. The girl in white frowned. You could be free. I am. No, you're remembered. That's different. Liora stepped forward. I'd rather be remembered than be perfect and forgotten. The girl's smile cracked. For just a moment, her hands blurred, as if they were made of paper, and wind had begun to blow. Then, a whisper, not from whisper, from the house. The choice is coming, and the walls bent inward. Not collapsing, just deciding. They passed through a hallway lined with doors. Most of them were labeled regret, delay, silence, joy not spoken. But one door, at the very end, was blank. No name, no glow, just waiting. Liora stopped. Vest tilted their head. This door isn't part of the house. Solon frowned. Then where does it lead? Whisper's voice. Hushed, somewhere the world tried to forget, and failed. Liora reached for the handle. It was warm, not with welcome, with recognition. She stepped inside and froze. It was a room, but not like any other. No floor, no walls, no ceiling. Only space woven of light and thread and drifting pieces of half memories. A child's laugh, not quite formed. A lullaby that never found a melody. A pair of hands sketching a shadow that didn't yet exist. At the center, a figure, not standing, not seated, floating. Its shape flickered, not unstable, just unfinished. And its voice was hers, not just hers, all of hers. Every age, every silence, every scream never voiced. You shouldn't be here, it said. Liora stepped closer. Neither should you. The figure looked at her. Its eyes, mirrors. She saw herself. Not now. Not before. But if I was the moment you doubted. The choice you almost made. The life where you walked away. She trembled. And why are you here? Because you returned to the shadows. And that made me real. Vest whispered. This is the world's error. A reflection made whole. Solon stepped beside her. We have to end it. But Liora shook her head. No, we have to understand it. She stepped forward. The figure leaned in, eyes shimmering, like storm glass. If you had turned left instead of right, I would be you, and you would be watching me, Liora whispered. But I didn't. Yet you remembered the road anyway, and so I remained. They stood in silence, not enemies, not friends, just possibilities. Then the figure held out a hand. Inside, a thread, glowing, unanchored. Take this. It is not a memory. It is a might have been. Liora took it and felt, not grief, not fear, gratitude. Because now, that version of herself would never be forgotten. Just not followed. The figure faded. The room pulsed once and vanished. Vest exhaled. That was not a shadow. That was choice. Given voice. Solon looked to Liora. How many more of you are out there? She smiled faintly. As many as I've ever doubted. They stood before the last door. No handle, no lock, no hinges, just stillness. As if the door didn't guard the room. It was the room. Whisper whispered, she sleeps. Not because she's tired, but because waking would unmake the story. Solon exhaled slowly. Vest nodded. The part of her that never chose. Because she chose everything. The door pulsed and opened. Inside, no light, no dark. Only weight of lives, of paths, of every what if that ever whispered almost. And at the center, a bed. Circular, floating just above the ground. And on it, Liora. Not her, not a version, but all of them, at once. Her hair, every shade she ever had. Her hands, scarred, smooth, calloused, soft. Her eyes, closed, but not resting, holding. Liora stepped closer. Vest and Solon stayed back. She could feel it now, a hum of memories being remembered, simultaneously, of a mind that never stopped watching any of the versions of herself, not even the broken ones, especially not the broken ones. Then, the sleeper opened her eyes. They were white, not blind, just so full of vision, they had no room for color. You came. The sleeper said. Leora's voice cracked. I had to. Why? To know if I could carry what you do. The sleeper sat up. No malice. No warmth. Just clarity. You collect shadows. I became them. You carry regrets. I became regret itself. You remember pain. I remember even those who forgot they were hurting. Liora stepped forward. You're tired. The sleeper tilted her head. I am done. Silence. Then, will you take it? What? Not the burden. The permission. to forget, to rest, and let someone else carry you. Liora shook her head. I don't need rest. Then at least take this. The sleeper reached behind her. From the folds of her own memory, she pulled a thread, unlike any other. Not glowing, not broken, still becoming. This is the future you have not reached. It needs a name, or it will fade. Liora took the thread, held it, felt it shimmer like hope that hasn't yet landed, and whispered, Solastra. The sleeper smiled. For the first time, then I can sleep for real. She lay down and faded, not vanished, just finally resting. The room blinked and folded in on itself. When Liora turned, Vest and Solon were already waiting. Solon said quietly, You gave her peace. Liora answered, No, she gave it to me. There was no path to the sky. It came to them, like mist rising, like memory softening, like a hush before the first note of a forgotten song. They stepped from the last thread of the house and found themselves above ground, but not on land, on air that held them, on wind that whispered in languages no one had ever spoken. Solon looked down. There was no down, only stars, and in them, names drifting like dandelion seeds. Vest raised a hand, tried to catch one. It melted into his palm. They don't remember who they were. Liora closed her eyes. I can feel them. Not their names, but their longing. The sky was not blue, nor black. It was the color of unsaid goodbyes. Here, things did not die. They simply faded. Because no one could remember to hold them. Whisper pulsed softly. This is the place between memory and myth, where the forgotten come to wait for someone to call them real again. Liora looked up, saw not clouds, but faces, soft, shimmering, not ghostly, but hopeful. One floated closer. It had no mouth, but it spoke. Do you know me? Liora tried, reached deep, found silence. I don't think I do. The face smiled, flickered. Then I will sleep a little longer, and drifted away. Solon whispered, This place is beautiful. Liora added, and unbearable. Then, a shimmer in the sky, a name, one that had not yet been given. But it called to her. Liora reached up, and the sky shook. She saw it, a child, alone, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. She had no name, but she had Leora's face, the face from long ago, the night of the fire, the night her parents vanished. Whisper whispered, You left her here. Vest stepped back. You were too young to carry her then. Liora fell to her knees. Tears rose uncalled. I thought she was me. She was, but you survived. She remained. The child floated closer, didn't blame, didn't cry, just waited. Liora opened her arms. Whisper flared. Are you ready? Liora whispered, Yes. She embraced the child and felt, not weight, not pain, but wholeness. The kind that only comes when you return to the part of you you never meant to leave behind. The stars above blinked, the sky sighed, and somewhere a name was born, but not spoken. Solastra. After the child was whole within her, Liora stood again, and the sky shifted, not like weather, like intention. A pathway opened, not a bridge, not a road, but a line of stars that blinked in rhythm. Vest murmured, Something calls. Whisper trembled, Something ancient, something that does not wish to be known, but must be met. They followed. The further they walked, the less they felt their own feet. The stars beneath them no longer glowed. They listened, as if measuring Leora's soul with every step. Then, a tower, floating, impossible, its walls spun with runes that wrote themselves and then unraveled as soon as they were read. At its base, a door, no lock, Just a single word etched in silver. Forget. Inside, quiet. Not silence. Quiet like a question you don't want answered. Shelves rose high into the air. But there were no books. Only names. Each one floating in a crystal sphere. Turning. Sleeping. Disappearing. One by one. At the center of the tower, a figure. Cloaked in robes stitched from paper that had no ink but bled memory. No face. No hands. Just a voice, like ash falling through time. You brought her. Liora froze. You know me. I do not know. I archive. To know is to risk remembering. Vest whispered. The archivist. The figure turned. Not by movement, but by atmosphere. This is the final library, where names go when no one dares speak them again. Solon asked softly, why keep them? So they may never return. Liora stepped forward, anger rising in her. They deserve to be remembered. Do they? What of names that harmed? That hurt? That failed? What of the name you left behind when you chose not to become like me? Leora's chest tightened. You forget to protect, but you also forget to control. The archivist raised a hand, and dozens of name crystals shattered in the air. Not loud, but final. Would you save them all, girl? Yes, she whispered. Even those that broke things? Yes, even if it cost your name. She hesitated. Whisper whispered, be careful. Some traits cannot be untraded. But Liora raised her hand. If my name means others live in memory, then take it. The archivist reached out. The tower trembled. But just before the hand touched her, a star burst in the sky, and from it, a voice. Soft. Familiar. Solastra. The name. Liora gave the future. It pulsed through her, through the tower, through the spheres. And the archivist paused. Then your name is not yours alone anymore. It has roots, and roots cannot be erased. The tower began to dissolve, but not in destruction. In release, the names floated, not to vanish, to return. Two skies, two stories, to someone who might one day remember. The archivist faded, not with fury, but with a whisper. Then let the remembering begin. The sky wasn't peaceful anymore. Something had changed. The stars that once drifted gently were now pulsing, twitching, blinking in strange, broken rhythms. Liora felt it in her chest, like a thread pulling the wrong way. Solon noticed too. He touched her shoulder. You feel that? She nodded. It's like something's waking up. Something that shouldn't. Vest said nothing, but his eyes were locked on the horizon. They followed the shift. It wasn't a path, more like a pull, as if the sky wanted them to see what was coming, but also wanted them to turn back. Then they saw it, a crater in the clouds, dark, spinning, and in the center, a single name. It wasn't floating like the others. It was rooted like a thorn stuck deep in the sky's skin. Liora stopped. Her breath caught. She didn't know the name, but her body did. Her bones, her blood, her silence. Vest's voice was low. You should walk away. No, she said. I think I've met this before, even if I didn't remember it. Solon stepped beside her. Do you want to know it? She looked down, then back up, and whispered, I have to. The name pulsed, and then it spoke, not out loud, not with sound. Inside her, I was once yours. You gave me power. You used me. She blinked. What are you talking about? You needed someone to blame. So you named me. I became your anger. The air around her dropped 10 degrees. She started shaking. Solon moved to help, but she raised a hand. No, let me listen. The name kept going. I was the scream you didn't release, the word you never said, the hand you never held. Liora bit her lip, hard. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, but you did. Silence. Then she said, very quietly, I was just a child. The sky pulsed once, not in anger, in understanding. So was I, and for a moment, Liora saw it. Not a monster, not a curse, a shadow of a girl, alone in a burning room, blamed for something she couldn't change. Liora stepped closer. I'm sorry. Then let me go. She hesitated. Will you come back? Not if you stop needing me. She placed her hand over the name. It was warm, like breath. She closed her eyes and let it fade. Just like that, the sky calmed. The stars stopped shaking, and her heart felt lighter. Not empty, not whole, but freer. They didn't know they were walking upward, but somehow they were. The air grew softer, cooler, not cold, just gentle. The stars parted, and there, nestled in a fold of sky, was a garden. It wasn't made of soil. It grew from light. Petals shimmered with stories. Leaves whispered emotions. And everywhere, floating gently between the flowers, names, not spoken, not written, becoming. Whisper hovered low. This is where it starts, where names find their shape before they find their sound. Vess looked around, quiet. Solon touched a blossom that trembled like breath. Liora stood in the center. The garden felt honest. Not perfect, not pure, but true. Every leaf pulsed, with a feeling someone once couldn't say out loud. Then she saw her, a woman, kneeling, planting seeds of light into soft stardust. Her face was kind, but sharp around the eyes. She was humming, and her hands knew what they were doing. Liora stepped closer. Are you the gardener? The woman smiled, but didn't look up. I plant what others don't say. When someone feels something too deeply to name it, it comes here. Liora crouched beside her. Why grow names? Because names are anchors. Without them, even memories drift. She turned finally, and Liora froze. The woman looked like her, older, wiser, but definitely her. You're me. One of you. The version that stayed soft, that never fought, that chose quiet. Liora didn't know what to say. The gardener kept planning. We're all made of things we never said. You chose to speak, I chose to. Sow. She reached into the dirt light and pulled out a seed. Held it to Liora. This one is yours. It hasn't bloomed yet, because you're not done becoming. Liora took it. Warm. Like a word she hadn't learned yet. Solon whispered from behind. Will it grow? The gardener nodded. If she lets it. Liora closed her eyes. Held the seed close to her heart, and for the first time, she didn't try to name it. She just felt it. And that was enough. The garden glowed a little brighter. The garden faded behind her. Not gone. Just letting go. Liora followed the starlight. But this time, it didn't lead her. It waited, as if asking, Are you sure? She nodded anyway. The sky grew darker. Not with danger. With depth. With secrets. Then she saw it. A figure. Curled on nothing. Wrapped in something that wasn't quite shadow. Wasn't quite light. It was still. Utterly still. But awake. Watching. She approached. It didn't move. Didn't breathe. But she knew it was alive. And waiting. Who are you? She asked. Silence. Then, I am what you never dared name. Leora's throat tightened. I don't understand. Yes, you do. It looked up. Eyes not angry. Not sad. Just tired. I was the thing you pushed away every time you looked in the mirror and wished to be someone else. I'm the part of you that watched while you survived, but never lived. Liora knelt. I didn't mean to leave you. You didn't. You just never looked back. They were quiet for a long time. The stars stopped moving. The sky held its breath. Then the figure whispered, Do I deserve a name? Liora felt tears rise. Not from pain, from recognition. You always did. She reached forward, touched its hand, fingers cold, but solid. She thought of all the nights she cried without knowing why, all the days she smiled when she felt empty, all the times she said I'm fine and didn't mean it. And softly, she said, "You're mine." The figure blinked and smiled, not because it finally existed, but because it had finally been seen. Then it whispered, "Call me when you need silence. I will listen, without judgment." Liora nodded, and the figure faded, but not gone, just waiting. She stood up. The sky pulsed. The stars realigned, and for the first time, they spelled her name. Not what others called her, not what she called herself, but the name that came when everything else was quiet. Asterisk, when Liora stepped back onto solid ground. She expected to feel something like comfort, but the earth didn't welcome her. It pulsed beneath her boots, familiar, but colder than she remembered. The trees were the same. The wind carried the same scent of pine and memory. And yet everything felt slightly tilted, as if the world had held its breath the moment she left and forgot how to exhale. Vest walked beside her in silence. Solon kept glancing at the horizon. Even Whisper was quiet, its glow dimmed to a soft, steady pulse. "I thought it would feel like coming home," Liora said. Solon looked at her gently. "Maybe it is, just not the version you left." They followed the old trail. It led to a clearing Liora hadn't seen in years. But it knew her. The grass bent away from her feet. The trees leaned ever so slightly back. The sky above turned a shade darker, as if watching. And then she saw it. A mirror, freestanding. No frame, just hovering in the center of the clearing. It didn't reflect the sky or the trees. Only her. But not as she was now, as she had been. 12 years old, scared, eyes full of questions and fire. Vest whispered, "That's not a memory." Whisper answered, "It's a memory that remembers her." Liora stepped closer. The girl in the mirror didn't mimic her. She stared back, judging, waiting. "Why are you here?" the girl asked. Liora blinked. "I thought I was coming back. Back. To what? Who I was. You're not her anymore." The mirror shimmered. And behind the girl, a house appeared. Her house. The one from before the fire. Whole. Alive. Laughing. "I miss this," Liora whispered. "Then why did you leave?" "I didn't have a choice. You always had a choice. Even when it hurt." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't know what I was doing. No one ever does. But we still live with what we did." Vest reached out to touch her shoulder, but his hand passed through. They were no longer in the forest. They were inside her, inside a memory that wasn't ready to forgive. The mirror shifted again. Now the reflection showed a version of Liora she didn't recognize. Older. Hardened. Alone. She stepped back. "I don't want to become her, then be someone else." "How?" "Start by listening, even to the voices you tried to forget." And then the mirror cracked. Not shattered. Just one clean fracture down the center. And from it a whisper, not from the mirror, from within her. "You can't go back, but you can go forward. If you stop lying to yourself." She closed her eyes, felt the pull, and took the first honest breath she'd had in years. Asterisk, the crack in the mirror didn't grow, but it didn't heal either. It hovered behind her like a line she hadn't crossed yet. Liora turned from it and walked forward, back into the forest. There was a clearing she hadn't entered since she was 9. She remembered chasing fireflies there, laughing, before the world twisted, and someone was waiting, leaning against a crooked oak, arms folded. Casual. Too casual. It was Finn. Not her brother, not her enemy, just the boy who used to wait for her after dusk, when no one else thought to look. He didn't smile, but his voice was soft. "Took you long enough. She froze. Finn. He nodded. Didn't move. I thought you, I mean, after the fire. Yeah, I didn't burn. But I got left. Ouch. I didn't know how to come back, she said. I know. But you still did in single quotes T dot double quotes silence dot the kind that fills your throat. You look different, she whispered. So do you. But not the way you think. She looked down, hands older, posture tighter. But he didn't mean the surface. You always thought you had to fix everything. I did. No, Liora. You just had to be there. The wind shifted. Pine needles felt like soft rain. I remembered you differently. She said, I know. You made me softer in your mind. Because it hurt less. Yeah, me too. She sat on the ground. He joined her. The silence returned. But this time, it was warm. I'm sorry, she said. For what? For being a ghost in your life. Finn nodded. Not because he forgave her. Because he understood. Then he looked at her. Really looked. You're not done yet, are you? She shook her head. I still don't know who I'm supposed to be. Then let me tell you something. He leaned in. Close. So she could feel the words, more than hear them. You were never supposed to be perfect, just real. And suddenly, she could breathe again. Not because the weight was gone, but because she finally let someone see her carry it. When she looked up, Finn was fading. Not in pain. Just letting go. Like he'd been waiting for this moment for too long. I'm still out there, he said. Somewhere. But now you can remember me. How I really was. Not just how you needed me to be. Then he was gone. And she wasn't alone. She was just with herself. For the first time. She found the mirror again. Not the cracked one. A new one. Simple. Tall. Still. It stood in the center of a circle of stones. The sky above it clear. But the air felt too still. Like the world was waiting. This time, it didn't show her face. It showed a chair. Empty. Facing her. And then, a voice sit. She hesitated. But sat. The voice wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It sounded like her on the edge of crying. Do you know why you left? She blinked. I had to. No. Why did you really leave? She wanted to say, to survive. But the truth came out softer. I didn't want to be seen breaking. Do you love who you are now? She looked down. I'm trying. Trying isn't the same as believing. She clenched her hands. I don't know how to believe. Something I've never felt. When did you stop being kind to yourself? That one hurt. Harder than she expected. She didn't have an answer. Only a memory, her 8-year-old self staring into the mirror and thinking her eyes were too wide and her voice too much. What are you most afraid of? She whispered. Becoming nothing after all this. And what do you want more than anything? She looked up. Her voice clear. To feel like I'm enough, even if I never save anyone again. Silence. The kind that's heavy, but not cruel. Then stand. She did. The mirror began to reflect. Not her face. Not her past. Her now. Eyes tired. Hands steady. Back not straight, but strong. And she smiled. Just a little. Not because she felt fixed. Because she felt real. The voice spoke one last time. You're not a question anymore. It started like a hum. Not in her ears. In her ribs. A quiet pull. Deep beneath thought. She looked up. The sky was still. But the stars, they weren't just shining. They were listening. Then came the voice. Small? Hopeful. Are you there? She turned. No one. Just wind. I don't exist yet. But I need you to say yes. Her heart stumbled. Yes to what? To becoming. It wasn't a ghost. Not a memory. Something else. Something that hadn't happened yet. But already felt real. You've walked through shadow. You've buried names. You've broken and mended and broken again. Now I need you to choose. She stepped into the open clearing. The voice followed her. If you stay still, I won't be born. But you'll be safe. If you walk forward, I'll exist. But so will the storm. Liora closed her eyes, felt the quiet in her hands, in her breath. I'm tired, she whispered. I know. I've lost more than I can carry. Then let me carry some of it. One day, when I arrive. She opened her eyes. The stars flickered. Once, then again, as if nodding. What's your name? She asked. Silence. Then. You haven't given it to me yet. And somehow, she smiled. She took one step forward. The earth softened beneath her feet. The sky brightened. And though no one stood beside her, she felt accompanied. Because sometimes hope isn't behind you or around you, but ahead, waiting to become. The sky had stilled. The stars rested. And Liora stood at the edge of a place that didn't exist on any map. A place between memory and tomorrow. There was a table. Small. Worn. Set with a single envelope. No name. No seal. Just wait. Not. PHYSICAL emotional. She sat. The chair didn't creak. It accepted her. Like it had always been waiting. She picked up the envelope. No words on the front. But her hands knew it. Her fingers trembled. And then she opened it. Inside was a letter. Written in her handwriting. But she had never written it. It began. To the. When I almost became. Her breath caught. She kept reading. I wanted to be strong. But I didn't know that strength meant being seen. I thought disappearing was easier than disappointing anyone. I tried to carry everything alone. Even the silence. She swallowed. The next lines were shakier. More real. I love things I couldn't say out loud. I feared things that didn't have names. And sometimes I hated myself more for surviving than I ever would have for falling. She looked up. But the world waited. Quietly. This letter was never meant to be sent. But I think you heard it anyway. Every time the wind changed. Every time a song hurt in the right place. If you're reading this, then maybe I did grow. Maybe the parts of me that I buried are blooming in you. And then, the last line. Written in darker ink. As if pressed with purpose. You are not my second chance. You are my first forgiveness. She closed the letter. Held it close. And let it ache, not break. Just ache. Solon appeared beside her. He didn't ask what it said. He just said, ready? She nodded. I think I finally am. And as they walked away, the stars shifted, forming not her name but her silence. Recognized, accepted, released. There was no gate. No sign. No voice. Telling her where to go. Just trees. Quiet, alive, watching. Liora stepped forward. The path beneath her feet wasn't clear. It bent, paused, split, but somehow it knew her. Or wanted to. Vest walked beside her. Whisper floated a little higher now, as if sensing the shift. Solon trailed behind. Fingers brushing against leaves that shimmered like memory, but hummed like possibility. This forest, Liora said, it doesn't feel old. Vest nodded. It remembers forward. She tilted her head. What does that mean? It remembers what hasn't happened yet. And it hopes you'll let it happen. They walked on, and the trees began to move. Not their trunks, their stories. Bark, unraveled like scrolls. Leaves folded into shapes. Each one showing a moment not from the past but from futures that had almost happened. She saw herself. In a city, in a mountain cabin, holding a child, singing alone in a storm. Every version of her still possible, still waiting. Her breath caught. Am I supposed to choose? Solon shook his head. No, you're supposed to listen. So she did. To the hush of branches. To the breath of moss. To the heartbeat beneath the soil. And in it, a rhythm that wasn't hers alone. A song. No lyrics. Just feeling. Steady. Hopeful. Trembling. Like something learning to live. Vest placed a hand on her back. You don't need to know the whole path. Just the next step. She looked down. The soil beneath her feet had bloomed not with flowers, but with light, and she took another step, not because she was sure, but because she was becoming. Asterisk they found her by the river. Or maybe she found them. She wasn't waiting. She was becoming. She sat on a stone that shimmered with stories no one had written yet. Her eyes were silver, not like metal, like moonlight on something that had never bled. She didn't stand, didn't smile. But when she spoke, her voice sounded like roots learning how to sing. You've come far to find yourself. Liora tilted her head. You know me. I know who you were, and I know who you might be. But only you know which one you'll choose. Whisper post. Vest said nothing. Solon bowed his head, as if in reverence. Liora stepped closer. You're not human anymore, are you? Not quite. Not anymore. What are you? The woman's gaze didn't falter. I am what happens when memory lets go and possibility says yes. She rose, and as she did, the trees bent toward her. Not in fear, in recognition. I once was like you, full of ache, full of almosts, but I chose not to be defined by what I had been. Liora swallowed. How? I stopped asking who I had been. I asked, who do I want to protect? What do I want to build? What will my silence leave behind? A wind moved through the forest. Not cold. Not warm. Just true. The woman stepped forward. Held out a hand. Not to lead. To witness. You are not the girl who collected shadows anymore. Liora felt it not as a compliment, but a shift, a truth. Then who am I? The woman's smile was slow, earned. That's up to you. But if you want, you can become the one who gives light names before anyone else sees them. Liora looked down. And for the first time she saw a name glowing beneath her feet. Not hers. Someone else's, waiting to be called into being. Asterisk she stood, where the trees thinned, and the sun touched the earth gently. As if asking permission, the soil beneath her feet glowed faintly. A name pulsed there, not formed, not claimed. Waiting. Vest stood behind her, Solon to her right, whisper hovering near her chest. No one spoke. Because this moment was not meant to be filled with words, only breath and truth. Liora knelt. Placed her hand over the light. It was warm, but not just warm. It felt like music before the first note. She closed her eyes. Let the world quiet and let herself feel, not think, not remember. Just feel. She saw a shape, not a person, not a future, a feeling, something soft and open. Something that did not ask to be protected, only named. She opened her mouth, spoke, not loudly. Not confidently. Just clearly. Your name is Solastra. The ground responded, not with sound, with acceptance. Light lifted from the soil and spun around her. Soft, gold, unfolding like a promise. Vest closed their eyes. Solon smiled. Whisper post once, then settled. Liora stood slowly. She didn't feel changed. She felt present, and that was enough. A voice quiet and young rose from the trees. You called me. Liora turned. There stood a girl, no older than 10, barefoot, eyes bright, hair shimmering like starlight at sunrise. You're Solastra? The girl nodded. I was a possibility. Now I'm a path. Leora's chest tightened. Not from fear, from relief. You're real. Because you believed I could be. The girl stepped forward, took Leora's hand. Now let's walk. You gave me a name. Let me show you what it means. And together, they moved deeper into the forest that no longer remembered only tomorrow. It remembered her. They didn't walk far, but it felt like crossing years. Solastra held her hand, warm, certain. Liora let herself follow, not because she didn't know the way, but because it felt good to not be the one leading for once. The trees parted, and there it was. Not a house, not really, just a space shaped like welcome. No walls, but roots formed a gentle circle. No roof, but the leaves above shifted like they knew how to shield. In the center, a fire. Not lit, not cold. Just waiting. Liora stepped. Any Solastra let go of her hand. This is yours, the girl said. Vest stood at the edge. Solon sat by the roots. Whisper rested in the air. The moment was quiet. Not heavy. Not broken. Just ready. Liora walked to the center. Kneeling beside the fire, she placed both hands on the soil. It didn't rise, didn't glow, but it pulsed with memory, with future, with her. She whispered, I didn't know I needed this. Solastra smiled. You didn't, until now. Liora looked up. The sky above wasn't the past, wasn't tomorrow. Just now. She could breathe here. Not perfectly, but freely. She reached toward the fire. Not to light it. To be still beside it. And the house, the shape, the space didn't ask her to do anything. It just let her be. Asterisk night settled over the forest. Not heavy, not sharp. Just honest. Liora sat beside the sleeping fire. The others had stepped away, giving her space. Only Whisper hovered close, glowing like a thought she hadn't finished yet. Then she felt it. A presence. Familiar. Not cruel, but careful. A shape moved just beyond the roots. No sound, no steps, just existence. Waiting. Liora didn't rise. She just said, you don't have to hide. The shape still. Then spoke. Its voice was soft. Worn. You always looked past me. Liora turned her head. I didn't know how to see. You didn't want to. Because I wasn't easy. I know. The shadow stepped closer. It had no face, no clear outline, but it held something. Weight. Memory. Regret. I was a version of you that never asked for help. That curled into silence. That carried it all until the silence felt safer than speaking. Liora felt a tightness in her chest. She whispered, I thought if I let you speak, you'd destroy me. No. I just wanted to be believed. They were quiet for a long time. Then Liora asked, do you want to come in? The shadow hesitated. No, but I'll stand nearby, if that's allowed. Liora nodded. It is. Will you forget me again? No, but I won't carry you like a burden. Then I'll stay. Not to haunt, just to be. And for the first time, the shadow sat. Not in the circle, but near enough to feel its warmth. Liora closed her eyes, not to escape, but to rest. Knowing now that even the parts she didn't save were still here, and still worthy. Asterisk. Liora no longer wandered. She walked. Not aimless, not afraid, not in search of someone else's name to rescue. She didn't stop seeing the shadows, but she didn't pull them into her basket anymore. Now, she sat beside them. Let them speak. Or not. And when they did, she listened without fixing. Vest stayed, but sometimes disappeared for days. Solon built things with his hands. Simple, strong. Whisper became quieter, not because it faded, but because the world was finally learning to listen without needing to be loud. Solastra grew quickly, not taller, but brighter. She would sometimes name things before they existed. Liora would laugh, and the names would take shape anyway. They built a home. No roof, but enough flight. No fences, but enough safety. And a table where silence and stories shared the same plate. One day, a shadow returned. Not one she knew, not one she feared. It sat beside her and asked, Are you still the girl who collects us? She smiled, softly, steadily. No, but I remember how to hold a hand until it's ready to let go. And that was enough. Asterisk.